Good morning, devotees. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta prayesvabhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Bhagavati utamas loke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. So we're going to read from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the 4th canto, chapter 28, chapter 28, text 48. Uttishta tishta rajarshe imam udhati mekalam asubhya kshatra bandhubhyo vivyatim patum harhasi. Synonyms. Uttishta, please get up. Uttishta, please get up. Raja Rishe, or saintly king. Imam, this earth. Udadhi, by the ocean. Mekalam, surrounded. Dasyubhya, from the rogues. Kshatrabandhubhya, from the unclean kings. Bivyatim, very much afraid. Patum, to protect. Arhasi, you ought. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. O best of kings, please get up, get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. Purport. Whenever an acharya comes, following the superior orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative, he establishes the principles of religion as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita. Religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. One executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service, specifically the 9 items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. Actually, human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord, and this is stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Mammanava madbhakto mam jajin man namas kuru mame vaishasi yukta evam atmanam matparayana. Engage your mind always in thinking of me and become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me, being completely absorbed in me. Surely you will come to me. The main business of human society is to think of a Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord, and to bow down before him. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles. But when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. The verse again. O best of kings, please get up, get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. Om Agyanatimirandasya Kinanjana Shalakaya Chaksurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Grim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurundina Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyaevacha Patitanam Pavanavyo Vaishnavavyo Namo Namaha. Here's Queen by Darby trying to get the king to come back to life. He's dead. Yet she presents a very important point, which is that once the ruler is no longer there, then everybody tries to take advantage. We see this in places where as soon as there is some excuse, no matter how small, obscure, or unrelated to anyone, low-class people come out from nowhere and they just loot. They just try to take advantage. So this is why we need someone strong. Among the Kshatriyas, there is one person that is wiser and stronger, and that's the king. So if we thought that democracy was the best political way to rule, we can see that democracy doesn't work. Why? Because the Kalo Sudra Sambhava, because everybody's a Sudra. So democracy may work among saintly people just as well as anarchy will work if everybody's saintly. It doesn't matter. There doesn't need to be actually government among the saints, but among the Sudras, democracy doesn't work. We can see that rogues and thieves multiply, and those who are in the position to stop them, they hesitate, just like in the shooting in that school. The police didn't intervene, and 20 young children got killed because those are not kshatriyas. Sometimes the Bodhis say the police are the kshatriyas. No, they're not. They're Sudras. They're Sudras with guns. So this world, unless it's ruled properly by a saintly king, you'll always find that crime will be prevalent and will get worse. And we can see that if there is impunity, just like the prisons that are built, prison is built for 500 and there's 1,800 people living in it. So the conditions are very difficult. It's very difficult to run. That's why they're trying to get the prisons empty, because they're so full, especially in America. And that means that the criminals are being released. It's a rotating system. So the cities in particular are full of criminals. They are loose. And the criminals know that. They can commit a crime and they can go to prison, but they will be released somehow or other. They may be released on a technicality. So the world is full of rogues and so-called kings, just like politicians and so on. They're there to take advantage as well. There's also Sudras. They're not Kshatriyas. They're not true administrators. So it's a difficult situation. The world is experiencing more and more chaos and disorder. And it's difficult to establish order if nobody knows where the head is. So it's just a decapitated body walking around like in a B horror movie. This is what the world is like these days. We are somewhat lucky to live in a more peaceful, bucolic, pastoral situation like here in Kitanagari, where we grow our own food. So we really don't care about the Dow Jones or the stock market, because we can produce from the land. And the influence of Kali Yuga is less, I would say, a lot less than will be in the outside world. So we are not hiding ourselves. We are just simply protecting ourselves from the rogues and thieves that run this planet. And the king is the toughest of them all, you see, because among kshatriyas, all the kshatriyas are powerful people, and they want to rule. They need to rule. That's their nature. So they rule villages, they rule counties, they rule countries, but they don't rule the world. There's someone is tougher than them. So they pay tribute to a true king. So Vadari here is urging Malayadvaja to wake up, being a bit illogical in the sense that the king is dead, left his body, but logical in the sense that without a true leader, things won't work. Let's get into the purport. Prabhupada says that whenever an acharya comes following the superior orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his representative, he establishes the principles of religion as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita. Dharmastu Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. Krishna says that he is the one who creates Dharma. And here is confirmed in the Gita, and Prabhupada says religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The verse that King Parikshit asked Sukadeva Goswami what was the definition of religion. And he said, I just had it. Anyway, is that, at least I remember in English, that religion means uninterrupted and unmotivated service to the Supreme Lord. This is the definition of religion. Religion is not some creed, some cult, some belief, some faith. These are all preliminary stages. Savai pumsa paro dharmo, yato bhaktir adokshaje, ahaitukiya pratihata, yayatma suprasidati. This is real religion, not some, I was born in this religion, therefore I have this religion, or I, like most Protestants, they go to a particular church because it's close to their home and because people are nice. It has nothing to do with God, nothing to do with religion. It's something that makes them feel good, like going to Chuck E. Cheese's. This is what it's like for Americans going to church. It makes me feel good. It's about feelings. It's about you. It's not about God and Dharma and religious principles. And also, is interrupted and motivated. So it doesn't qualify, according to Sukadeva Goswami's definition. It's motivated by the desire for wealth or by the need to belong socially or by pressure, is motivated by fear, it's motivated by many things. So this is not real religion. Real religion, Sukadeva Goswami says, is ahaituki, apratihata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. That means is for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, is because it is right, and not once a week, not twice or 7 days a week, 24/7. One should think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like when we act, we many times forget to think, is this what the spiritual master will want me to do? Is this what Krishna will be pleased with? So that's a measure of those who are advanced. It is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. So that's an Acharya is someone who actually, well, we say the definition of a devotee is he or she who makes others become devotees. So the Acharya is the same thing, but in a massive way. And he feels it's his duty to do it. One executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service, specifically the 9 items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. It's not like the other processes like offering prayers, etc. It's not worshiping. They are not important. It's like there's all subservience to hearing and chanting and remembering. This is the prime duty of anyone who calls himself religious. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappear, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. This is a business. Like in India, Prabhupada would say that there are people who they have a wife and kids, and they're just ordinary people, and the guy just dons his saffron robes during the day and becomes a mendicant or does a so-called show of renunciation in the business. So we can see that India has exported people like that take little portions, whether they are ignorant or unscrupulous. That's still to be seen or has been seen, but they actually are not bona fide, and they present small portions. Like a friend of mine was saying words, it was saying a lot of words that devotees use, but he didn't know the meaning of them. They actually changed the meaning, and in the organization that he belongs, they have these things that appear like bhakti, but they aren't. Bhakti is a very special thing. It's just very rare. So you can make a hodgepodge, you can make a smoothie out of some of the terminology of bhakti and present it as bhakti, but bhakti is on a completely different level and needs to be in disciplic succession. The Acharya gives it to their disciples and so on. Actually, human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord, and this is stated in Bhagavad Gita in the one of the two Manmana Bhakto verses. One is in the 9th chapter and one is in the 18th chapter, just prior to the Sarvadharman Parityaja. So Krishna, who is not a slouch when it comes to speaking, doesn't need to repeat himself, does repeat himself, because he's making, is putting some emphasis into this point, which is crucial, that we understand that our life is meant to surrender to Krishna. And due to envy and forgetfulness, we somehow or other suffer from spiritual amnesia. So we need to regain that consciousness that we had before we made such a terrible error of judgment. We actually thought that we could be Krishna, or we could enjoy like Krishna. And that desire is everybody's desire in the material world, except for a few who practice bhakti. So Krishna again, here Prabhupada translates the verse, engage your mind always in thinking of me and become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So how do you engage your mind always in thinking of Krishna? This is very difficult. By chanting and by adopting the principles of devotional service. As we can read, the qualities of a devotee are extremely rare and exalted, and it all begins by hearing and chanting and remembering. Offer obeisances. There is no harm in offering more obeisances that the rules call for. Worshipping Krishna one way or another, always putting Krishna in the center and being completely absorbed in me, surely will come to me. This is self-explanatory, I would say. The main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord and to bow down before him. So what is the business of a living entity? Is to always think of Krishna. So whatever we do needs to be geared towards one goal only, which is to remember Krishna. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles. But when he disappears, things once again become disorder. Just like we have witnessed once Srila Prabhupada disappeared, the movement went on and it's still going on, but somehow or other it took different directions. That there were, like before when Prabhupada was on the planet, if you had any questions, any doubt, whether philosophical or otherwise, you just wrote a letter to Prabhupada. Or if he was in your town, you just ask it during class, and Prabhupada knew everything. Just he could solve any controversy. And once Prabhupada left, some things that weren't so clear. So as the mind is many branched, so becomes a movement when the Acharya is not present. So things take more work. At the present moment, practically, the perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. This is the life and soul of the disciple. Somehow or other, you have to go back to the instructions of the Guru. Just like Srila Prabhupada got the instructions in the 20s, and it wasn't until 40 years later, in his ripe old age, that he was able to implement the order of his spiritual master. In in an extraordinary way, must add. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. And this was written nearly 50 years ago. And now this is more true than before. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. So this is not just meant for the believers, it's meant for everyone. Those who abide by the laws of God, they're fortunate, and those who don't, they're very unfortunate, and they should be brought under control, because otherwise it's a very chaotic world where everybody's trying to take advantage at the cost of everyone else's comfort and life. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. So Prabhupada doesn't discount that there are other processes and other religions and so on. There's upadharmas, there are philosophical processes and yoga and religion and all these other things. And wherever you're at, that's where you are. And good luck to you. Try to become God conscious, because you don't have enough sukriti, enough piety, enough knowledge, enough desire, enough sincerity. There's many things that are missing from your formula in order to become a delectable dish to be offered to Krishna. But regardless of that, Prabhupada says it very clearly at the very end of this purport, everyone, that means everybody, should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. So the goal for everybody is the same, to have peace and happiness. So this is, once again, this is the solution. This is the formula that Prabhupada gives. Just cooperate with this movement and you'll get what you want. Even if you have material desires to be fulfilled, why would you just try to exploit and go a roundabout way like a thief in the night? Ask Krishna. If you have material desires and you can't get rid of them, ask Krishna to fulfill them. The advantage of that is that Krishna will fulfill them, your material desires too. However, he will do it in a way that it will be beneficial to your spiritual life. He may do it in a way that you will never ask for that again, but he will fulfill your material desires. So let's put Krishna in the center, and wherever you are, akama, sarva kama va, moksha kama, uddaradi, vibrena bhakti yogena. Doesn't matter where you're at. You have full material desires, you have no material desires. Just Krishna is your man. He will take care of you. So why seek away from Krishna or hiding from Krishna? We should ask Krishna for everything we need. And eventually our material desires will be purified and our heart will be softer, and we will start seeing, hopefully at a certain point, the super soul, which is sitting right next to the soul. And we will see that our business is his business, so we should follow. I will understand that it is silly. What we have been doing is fruitless and silly, and turn back to Krishna and do his bidding, because it's the best thing for us. He's much smarter and kinder and understands us better than we understand ourselves. And people are fond of saying, "Oh, you don't understand me." Yeah, that's probably true, but it's true about our own conception of ourselves. We don't understand ourselves quite well, but Krishna does. And he's, as the best friend, he's following us in our sojourn, long excursion that we took away from a spiritual world, away from our life, and in many species of life. And Krishna is always there, trying to put some sense into us. So there are many lessons to be understood from this verse, but my main points are that the Acharya is the one who establishes or reestablishes the religious principles of Krishna's supremacy, and that instead of following our body or mind, we should follow the wishes of the soul, which is to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who knows a lot better than us. And that's the message for today. At least that's a little message I have for you. Would you, Prabhus, like to add anything? Whether it be comments, questions, or point out some imperfections in my soliloquy, you're welcome to do it anytime you want.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
I think there is a cow that wants to speak.
Haribo Prabhu, can you hear me? Haribo, can you hear me?
All right.
Haribo Prabhu.
The class is supposed
Prabhu,
to go pretty much all the way until 8, but I find it quite annoying if someone doesn't have much to say and continues to say things by saying so, then, and. So that's all I had, and I'm content with that, and I hope I did a half decent job presenting, dissecting the verse for you.
Sarvatma Prabhu.
I don't have anything else to say at this point. Taraka Prabhu, you want to add something?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
I can't hear Taraka Prabhu and Agari Prabhu. Okay, try to speak again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I do. Sorry about that, Prabhu.
Yeah, another Prabhu was trying to ask a question, and evidently you were not able to hear. I couldn't tell who it was.
It was me, Prabhu. It was Agari Krishna Das.
Agari Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. How can
Haribo Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for your class. I don't know. I can't figure a way how to relate this question. But it just relates to having detachment or vairagya in terms of accepting the full import of Krishna consciousness as one's life and soul. So my question relates to Lord Chaitanya's civil disobedience, particularly against the caste system, and yeah, basically how the Brahmanas were trying to just have an hegemonic stranglehold over Brahminical culture based on birth as opposed to qualification. And Lord Chaitanya, on the basis of scripture, he created a revolution. And this is, I think, probably, about 200 years before the worldwide abolitionist movement against slavery. And when you read, non-mainstream accounts of slavery, there's been numerous studies that have been done that it wasn't just, an Atlantic West African phenomenon, but actually it was worldwide. Whites were enslaving white Europeans, just everybody was just enslaving everybody. So in your understanding, and also based on, your extensive hearing and analysis, hearing the erudite analyses of your Guru Maharaj, has he ever commented on this? Because there's one peculiarity with this history in that apparently one scholar did a study and they said that there were more slaves in India than in the Western Hemisphere. Now, this is in contrast with what your Guru Maharaj has said about how society in India was actually the most progressive. You found evidence of animal rights, and just people were living in harmony. So how does this, have you ever heard him comment on this? And if so, how does Lord Chaitanya's revolution, a caste system revolution against the Smarta Brahmanas, was that, a prerequisite step that was needed in order to actually inspire a worldwide abolitionist movement?
What I understand, Prabhu, and I heard my Guru talk about an ambassador. I think he was from Greece. It could have been from Persia, but I think it was from Greece. And he noticed this many centuries ago, and he noticed that India was the only place where they didn't have slaves. He actually wrote that down, and people were happy. They were well engaged, and this was the message of Lord Chaitanya, that I think there is no need for abolition when there are no slaves. I don't know what study you mentioned where this person said that there was slavery in India. I think maybe exploitation could have been there, because there was always unscrupulous people. From the moment that Shringi cursed Maharaj Parikshit, things started to go a little haywire, and that signified the entrance of the age of Kali. So with so many people having so many material desires to lord it over and to control, I'm sure there were many instances of people being exploited, because the Kshatriyas are supposed to protect everyone, and the Brahmins are supposed to advise the Kshatriyas, but if the Brahmins are not pure, the advice may not come. The Kshatriyas, they are too ambitious and they don't have a saintly king, then they will rebel and things won't work the way they should. So I imagine, my conjecture is that I'm sure there was exploitation at any given time. But as far as Lord Chaitanya's disobedience, or how to implement the Kiva Vipra Kiva Nyasa Sudra Kinenoy Ye Krishna Tattva Veta Se Guru Hoy, that anyone who knows the science of Krishna consciousness is a guru, and doesn't matter their origin, whether it be a learned person like Vipra, Nyase, a renunciant, like a sannyasi, Sudra Kinenoy, or a Sudra, someone coming from a very low class and social terms background, could be at the helm and could understand. If he understands the science of Krishna consciousness, that person is to be followed, is to be listened to. And of course, it is a family business in India. The Brahman, to be a Brahman, you get some privileges and some prestige, And even in our movement, we see that people, they just flaunt their Brahminical threat. Like, I'm a Brahman, and what do you know? Or I've been initiated 2 months before you did, so I'm your senior, I'm your superior, and by definition, I know better. Again, we don't need to follow this biased understanding of Krishna consciousness. Even there is sometimes exploitation in Krishna consciousness, because we think we know better, or we need something, or we have material desires, and we want people to serve us. And this is so common. We can observe that some people love to be served. They just can't wait. So even among some sannyasis, they're supposed to be the servant of the servant and the most renounced. They just travel with an entourage of servants and cooks and so on. And this is not a good example. I would say that the more simple, the better. And simple doesn't mean poverty-stricken or starving, just simply whatever you need. And if you are a true saintly person, automatically people will want to serve you. You don't have to demand this. You will command it, and people will be at your feet because you are actually delivering Krishna. So I think I cannot fully answer your question, your inquiry, because I don't have the historical data, but I know that it was actually recorded in history as an ambassador wrote that there was no slavery. People were free, and this freedom included criticizing the government openly. You could actually just, I don't know if there was one day a week or every day or any time, but you could criticize the government, and there were no consequences to that, none whatsoever. You weren't marked as a dissenter and then eventually kidnapped. I remember living in Argentina during the military intervention, which was actually more than one, was more often than not. And eventually, after so many military coups d'etats that they basically were passing the batons, unscrupulous military men to others, with the implicit help of the Catholic Church, very powerful, because 90% of the Argentinians are Roman Catholics. Somehow or other, they lit up, and they decided there should be democratic elections. So, of course, it was such a relief from this pressure cooker that people went to the streets to celebrate, and they started, parties started forming, that the workers' parties and the socialist party and the independent party and all sorts of things started happening. And eventually they elected a civil democratic government, which ruled for a couple of years without the help of a military. Pretty much they kept to themselves. But there was a plan. Their intelligence service was very active, and they were going to different demonstrations and infiltrating themselves into different political parties and leftist groups, and taking pictures and taking names. And eventually, when they gathered enough information, which was in 1976, they went and collected all these people, kidnapped them, these mostly young people, from their parents' home in the middle of the night. They just, a bunch of army or yeah, people in civil clothes, they went and took them out of the bed and tortured them and killed them. And so the official estimate of people who disappeared was about 30,000. They were drugged and thrown from a helicopter or a plane right into the river. So they drowned after being tortured, etc., etc. So this was the totalitarian regime. So sometimes we actually see that exploitation goes on all over the world. Maybe slavery was officially abolished, but there is still exploitation. And ultimately, we are slaves to our senses. And that's, unless there is a Krishna conscious program, that will never be abolished, and slavery will continue. So I guess my final answer to your question is charity begins at home. We have to become Krishna conscious ourselves. We may not be able to save the world and our present state. So we have to work on ourselves, and not in a selfish way, seen as a step towards the emancipation of our fellow brothers and sisters who are also slaves to their senses. It was more poetic than a true answer, but that's all I have for you, Prabhu.
No, it was good, Prabhu. Thank you. I guess, yeah, as you're saying, the caste system can be misinterpreted on face value as a form of slavery, in that people who are not born Brahmanas, just by the way they look and behave, they are treated as Sudras. And so with with these basically smarta Brahmanas, it can just seem very exploitative, and therefore it looks like what was being done by the rest of the world, which was, just buying. In other words, if you enter into a country where the labor, most of the labor is being utilized the same way as outside, then you assume that, okay, it was sourced in the same way. In that, okay, this person, this Sudra in India I'm seeing, was probably purchased at an open air market. But yeah, I'm just very curious about this, because there's just a point on Lord Chaitanya. Basically, I think this was Bhakti Charu Maharaj was mentioning this point about how the Indian diaspora is part of Lord Chaitanya's plan for spreading the Sankirtan movement all over the world, and that they are very successful middleman minority in doing business around the world. And wherever you go in the world, you will find some Indian diaspora who will be sympathetic to the cause of Krishna consciousness, and specifically the Gujaratis, because they come from Dwarka, and they are, their tendencies more towards the worship of Krishna. This is just what I've been thinking about last couple of days. But thank you.
I'm not sure about if I agree with the idea that the Indian diaspora is Lord Chaitanya's plan to spread Krishna consciousness. It's more like to spread business, but not directly Krishna consciousness. They have this piety embedded in the core of their being. Especially Gujaratis are very pious people, but it's far from what Prabhupada intended as a movement to revolutionize the world. And this is not done by Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Sudras, done by everybody. And we see the disparity in America, where someone that is born with obvious Sudra tendencies, but in a rich family, is sent to study cello and to travel and see the museums and the classic works of art and et cetera, et cetera. But that person is a Sudra. All he wants to do is to fix cars or something like that. And someone who has intellectual capabilities and good philosophical understanding, because born in a poor family, doesn't have a chance to be educated. So that's perhaps what we have to change, that people in India, they may have been working hard and others may have seen them as being exploited, but that was their nature. They were happy doing that, as well as a person who is happy fixing cars will quit the cello lessons any day and go into museums in order to just get greasy and, be with nuts and bolts. So we have to find what people are adept at and engage them according to their propensities. And there's no shame. A musician is a Sudra. An artist is a Sudra. As an actor, most of the people that I admire in the world, actors and athletes, are Sudras. They're Sudras. They shouldn't be prominent, but they are, because everybody's a Sudra. Anyway, time's up, 7:59. So that's all I have. Sorry if I mess up. And if you disagree, please send me a private message and I'll be glad to be corrected, or publicly, whatever your preference is, but not at this point. We have to go. Thank you, Prabhus. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.